This is Kickin' and Streamin' Podcast, a binge watcher's guide to streaming movies, TV series, and stuff. Here are your hosts, Graham and Jocelyn.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Kickin' and Streaming Podcast. Welcome to the first episode of 2021. My name is Graham, and with me today, of course, is the very fantastic Jojo, who is right here on my computer. Hello, Jojo.
Howdy do.
Yes, the first howdy do of the year. Hopefully, there's at least 50 more to come.
Yes.
Howdy do. Yeah. I didn't even realize it, but we did well last year, didn't we? We
Yeah.
put out 48 podcast episodes.
Yeah. We brought it.
Yeah. So we intend to do the same thing this year. Today we bring you the first program, the first podcast episode today, and we're starting a bit on a serious side because I am glad that I watched this documentary, and for a number of reasons. I will start by saying that I don't know how I feel about the whole thing. I feel like there's a lot of credible, plausible things here, but at the same time, there are some questionable methods in explanations, and so we're gonna try that, innit? We're gonna
Yes.
go through it. We're talking about the documentary film "Crazy Not Insane." Jojo, what do you think?
This one was my pick, so I am definitely interested, of course, as always, to hear your take on it. But I thought it would be good for us to talk about this one because I don't think a lot of people have watched it. I don't think maybe the documentary scene is all that popular, but I felt like it was something that we could get a good conversation out of because it's certainly relevant to what's going on in the world today. And also, as you said, there are some questionable things that go on in this documentary. Some questionable methodology, I guess, is the word that you could use for the doctors to find some of their diagnoses or what they've come to, but I feel like it speaks to a greater picture of the issue of the way people with mental health issues, mental health diseases are treated in the correctional facility in the states in the United States.
Yeah, that's exactly for me the most important part of it is the notion that we claim to be a civilized nation, and we preached about that, but yet we are one of the very few nations that kill people. Period in our criminal justice system, and we actually kill people mostly uh, with mental illnesses. So, with that said, Jojo, I'd obviously ask you to put it together for our audience, and then we'll take it from there. Right?
So this is it's called Crazy Not Insane. It is a documentary. It's on HBO Max, available for streaming, and it follows the life work of Dr. Dorothy Lewis, who is a very interesting individual. She started working as someone dealing more with serial killers and working for the prosecution in some cases. And as she talked to people and as she did some more research, she decided that she needed to do even more research because she just didn't feel that the people were being completely understood, that mental illness wasn't being completely understood, and what the background of violence can do to people. So this is a documentary about her work, and about the plight of the people who are in the criminal justice system for crimes that they have committed that are incredibly horrible. There's no denying that. But what should be the actual end result of their actions? What should be the consequences of their actions if someone truly has a mental illness or a brain injury and has done something terrible? And I just found it to be something very important to watch, especially if you do suffer from any sort of mental illness, like depression or bipolar or anything at all like that. I felt it gave a very sort of a almost cautionary tale for those of us who suffer from those sort of things. If we do become part of the criminal justice system, how we can be manipulated and used.
Yeah, easy praise, aren't they? To be honest, because this is the only country where killing somebody with a mental illness is being tough on crime, not recognizing that there are not only mitigating circumstances, but circumstances, period, that cause people to snap, and the failure on our part to never have known what these people as children went through, and here we are now. We get to kill them, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and in her work, in Dr. Lewis's work, she's discovering that a lot of serial killers and violent offenders had a very violent upbringing or a very abused upbringing, whether it was mental abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, sometimes a combination of all of that. And she partnered with I believe, a neurologist who was able to do scans of these very, very violent offenders' brains and discover that quite a few of them actually had brain damage. So you have the point of mental illness in a sort of a non-physical sense, a for lack of a better term, a spiritual sense, if you will. You can't point to an MRI and say, that's why you have depression.
Right.
But you go from that to a physical sense and saying these people have damage to their frontal cortex, to the lobe. They have damage to the area of the brain that makes us, quote unquote, human and not lizard or animal. So if they have this lack of control and we're putting them to death, how does that make us, how is that fighting evil? What are we doing to these people that have had this happen to them? I think a lot of people have issue with her work because I think some people have interpreted it that she's sort of an apologist for the people. Right. And she is not. She says that, these people have done these things and they're not going to be able to control their impulses, and they do not have a place in our society because they will hurt people. However, her issue, her problem with everything is the death penalty, is capital punishment, is that we're putting people to death who do not understand, that have no ability to understand that they've committed a crime that is going to take away their life. There's the example of Ricky Ray Vector, who was put to death in Arkansas. And he had a sort of a routine, a ritual, if you will, with his food, that he always saved his dessert for like an hour, a couple hours after dinner.
Yeah.
And when he had his last meal for execution, after he'd committed, these violent crimes and been committed or convicted, he saved his dessert again the night of his execution. He saved it for after the execution.
Right.
And the point of that is, how can you deem that this person is sane and can understand what has happened and what is going to happen to them? You can't. So I found this very, very, very informative, and I although some of her methods are strange, and we can talk about that, I just feel that Dr. Lewis is such an important advocate for the people who cannot and absolutely will never be able to speak up for themselves or make any sort of an argument for themselves. And by helping people, I do not mean that she is advocating for them to be out on the streets or be free, but in the sense of let's not. How can we call ourselves a civilized nation if we're executing, killing people who don't understand? And how can we call ourselves? How is that human? Where is the humanity in
Right.
that? Where is the rights in that? And also bringing attention and awareness to the fact that if children are being brought up in a very violent, very abusive home, of course, everybody's like, oh, that's terrible, that's bad, whatever.
Yeah.
But the actual very real repercussions that may happen down the road, that we may have a very, very violent individual, sick individual released on society if we allow this to happen in a home where children should be cared and nourished and all of the good things that should be happening. So shining a light on that, I felt is just important.
There were moments in the film where I kind of saw exactly where she was coming from, and I felt like for some reason they were trying to have her explain herself more than they would have asked of any person who had a penis and a pair of testicles. The credibility was there. The science was there. And you can make the argument, well, yeah, I was whipped too when I was a kid. You don't know what these people, and some of these people don't ever talk about that, right? Which is the reason why they create other personalities to cope with that shit, right?
Yes.
And as she said, some of them make it their life mission to never, ever get seen or discovered as, based on what they went through. And so you can make this argument, but Dr. Lewis brought about the science of why we shouldn't kill people with mental illness. And not only that, but there is another responsibility that we have to society, in that we have to look into how children are being raised, and a little beyond what it looks like from outside, because we're failing those kids, and in the end they become what we see. And obviously it's not all the time, it doesn't happen with everybody, but you have to ask those questions, and Dr. Lewis shines a very bright light on that.
I was just going to interject. The issue of it not happening with everybody is absolutely valid, but at the same time, we have to think of the fact that just because it's not happening doesn't mean that it's okay for the abuse to continue. And I know that's not at all what you were saying, but just to say, oh, well, I got whooped and I turned out fine, or, this person endured horrible abuse and they're perfectly quote unquote fine. I'd say, well, that doesn't mean that it's okay, because they had a terrible childhood, one, and two, just because you think you're okay doesn't necessarily mean you are.
That's exactly.
And also, a lot of these people are not okay. They're not living a normal, productive, happy, joyful life. They aren't. They may be a member of society in the fact that they might be able to get out of bed and go to work and come home and drink themselves to sleep, just as an example, but that doesn't, it's not helping. It's not helping the overall goodness of the world.
Right. Being functional does not necessarily mean that you are okay. That's absolute fucking bullshit, But we have bought into this whole thing of as long as you can function and you appear to be normal, then you are okay. And that's one. The second thing is, if you go through depression and if you have a mental illness, then you're just weak, And so we are not giving people any room to say, I'm not okay and I would like to do something about it. The people that are not okay and have no problem talking about it, they have to be fucking applauded, because that's an act of bravery that most of us don't have the balls to, right? Because the society that we live in will chastise you and
Yes.
make it feel like you have nothing to complain about. You are not okay because you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, this is why it is easy for a jury to say, yeah, this person has to die. And again, there's another thing, Jocelyn, that I think Dr. Lewis challenged. And I love the fact that she challenged that. It is the whole idea of good versus bad, evil and bad and good. And she challenged it in the way that the whole evil thing is it's a religious terminology. It does not exist in scientific terms, because evil suggests that somebody chose to be bad, and that's not the way it works.
Yes, exactly. And it has no place in a court of law. The idea of evil has no place in the court of law. It doesn't have a place in science. It doesn't have a place in the court of law. It's always chilling for me when you watch any kind of a crime show or anything like that. And I'm talking about like a documentary style type thing. When you talk to actual prosecutors and they're like, I was staring in the eyes of pure evil. You'll hear that a lot. And I'm like, and I'm not saying, believe me, I am not saying that it's okay that these people did horrible things.
No.
But you cannot be dispassionate, and you can't have it both ways. You can't say I was staring in the eyes of evil and, I can totally be, an unbiased juror or whatever. If you believe that exists, if you believe that the devil can look out of someone's eyes, then there's no way that you can be unbiased when it comes to choosing the death penalty for someone. I am not a believer in capital punishment. I am not a believer in the death penalty because, for one reason, there have been many people who have been sent to the chair, or the lethal injection, whatever, and it's come out down the road that they had the wrong person. So
they did nothing wrong, exactly.
So the state has murdered an innocent person. And then also for the sake of, I just don't think that is part of being a human.
Right. And again, because of the belief of evil and good, you see a lot of district attorneys, wardens, and even governors pontificate, well, these people are there because they did very bad thing. And they actually justify, for instance, I remember, Joe Arpaio, for example, right? Joe Arpaio built a tent city in an area of the world where during the summer, right, it can get to be up to 126 degrees Fahrenheit, and had people living there in quarters, one over each other. And his justification was, well, they're criminals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? What, are you judge, jury, and fucking executioner?
Yeah.
The reason why we have a criminal justice system, isn't it? You don't get to decide that these people don't have to be treated humanely because they are criminals. You don't get to do that. This is an authority that you are taking that does not belong to you, right?
Yeah. And so many of those people weren't even violent offenders. And a good portion of the people that were in there probably were innocent, because we were finding that out more and more and more through DNA, that people are in prison who should never have been in prison because they were there on somebody's hunch, or just they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. I do not get where anybody can decide that that is okay. How do you justify that in your brain, that just because, not just, but because somebody did something wrong and was found guilty in the eyes of the law, that they are no longer a human being?
Right. But then, in to your point, adding to that, what kind of authority do you adjudicate to yourself to say, I get to kill you because you killed other human being? Where's the moral argument here? And this is what I don't understand. So I, as the state, I have the right to kill you because, I make laws that says that I have that right. You, on the other hand, you should have never killed because killing is wrong. So it's wrong when you do it. When I go through the laws to find a reason to say, you did this, you should get killed, it's fine because I'm the state. I do not, this argument for capital punishment is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah.
Yep. It reminds me of the old joke of the little boy that smacks his sister, and his mom turns around and smacks him across the face and is like, "You shouldn't hit people." The little boy's like, "What?"
I don't know about it.
True, you shouldn't hit people, but I mean, just that the punishment was the exact as the crime is kind of silly.
Yeah, let's also talk about a bit the notion that there was a time where crime and punishment was the way to go in order to perpetuate yourself in public office. There was a collage of very famous politicians, some with whom we agree and we today vote for, and some we've never voted for and we've never agreed with, making a case for, no rehabilitation, punishment is what it is, right? And we talk about, people evolving, some of these politicians in terms of thought process, in terms of political beliefs, evolving to being better human being, and we give them the benefit of the doubt. But some of them we haven't. I was particularly fascinated by the fact that Joe Biden, in a few days, gets to become president of the United States. And we elected him because we gave him the benefit of the doubt, even though, right, he had, a concerted effort in the crime bill that passed in the 90s. Yet we made a big deal about something that Hillary Clinton said a long time ago during that time of crime bill, when she talked about super predators. So again, do you think that we are more lenient and actually we're more ready to give a pass to any male politician that says, I've evolved and that's not the way I think anymore, compared to, say, the same thing we were talking about Dr. Lewis, right?
Yeah, I do. I agree with you with that 100%. I think that men, particularly white men, are always going to get a pass, more so than a woman, a white woman, or a woman of color. A white woman might get a little bit more of a pass, but at the same time, when it comes down to femininity, there is something in the world that hates it. So it's, being a woman is being other, is being a lower class citizen, is being a little less than human. So I agree with that again, white men in particular, in the climate we're currently in, are always going to get a pass. You know, there's the saying, which makes me so angry, but boys will be boys. What? Like, what?
What does that mean, actually?
Yeah, like, it's like, oh, yeah, he did this and this, but you know, boys will be boys. Like, what does that's been used in legal arguments, in rape cases, in so many things, that boys will be boys, and it makes me so angry because it's just a nonsense statement. It means literally nothing, but it is
Absolutely.
taken so seriously. And then you have Dr. Lewis, who is very intelligent and fiery and knows what she's talking about, and she is horribly badgered on the witness stand. There is, you know, there's video of that in one of the cases she was in, where they surprised her with some evidence that they had kept from her, I think honestly with the sole purpose of embarrassing her on the witness stand.
Yep.
I do not believe that would have happened if she were male. I do not believe that.
You can see the difference in the way that Park Dietz comes in, sits there, right?
Yes.
And just
Yes.
certificates, like, boom, it's like immediately believed. Like, there's no question. No one dared to question anything that Park, first, because it was convenient, but secondly, as Dr. Lewis said, it was a good-looking dude, white male, who sat down, crossed his legs, you know, maintained a straight, you know, a torso, and said shit with authority. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
a woman, though, are you sure about what you're saying? Really? Do you really think that's what happened? Oh, so why? What? You seem to be kind of like out of it. Like, are you menstruating? Do you need a moment?
Right.
You know, it's just fucking amazing to me, Justin. It is. It's an amazing thing. I don't know. Like these. Look, I know that there's this whole saying out there that, you know, men who are self-described feminists can't shut up about it. You know, I'm not gonna go and say I'm a feminist or whatever, because, you know, but the thing is, I have learned to observe that there is a way that we treat and we deal with women in comparison to a way that we deal with men, especially women of color, but in general, we are so much more eager to punish women for mistakes, for even merely for the fact of being women. I mean, okay. I'm gonna put an argument here that is it could be used as a counter argument, but here's what I'm saying. Strom Thurmond, I think, filibustered the Civil Rights Act for about 23 hours, right? Senator from South Carolina, a non-white supremacist and racist as fuck. Like, I'm not joking. That nigga was a racist motherfucker, right?
Yep.
23 hours or so. Do you know the physical strength that it takes to filibuster for 23 hours? I'm talking about not taking a pee break. You can't even lean against the lectern. You can't stop talking for a period of time. But this guy was trying. Literally, what he wanted is black people shouldn't have rights. This is not America. And so if I have to stand here for the better part of a whole day and argue that shit, so be it. I'm a racist and I'm a proud racist, right? But in the latter part of his life, Strom Thurmond actually changed his mind and became a strong supporter of civil rights and did a whole lot of good shit. But we actually cancel Paula Dean for some racist shit that she said and did, even when she, you know, cried and was incredibly apologetic. And maybe she wasn't. She wasn't. Maybe she cried because she knew all the shit that she was losing, but she apologized. But still, fuck you, Paula. Let's cancel you. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe Strom Thurmond just decided, I'm going to protect my legacy here, and I don't want to be remembered as the racist guy who filibustered the Civil Rights Act for 23 hours. So let me do something to work on that before I die. And still, my entire life, I was a racist. What's being good for the next, I don't know, 8 years of my life? You know what I mean?
I think the difference that you could say there is that he was given that opportunity.
Right.
He was allowed to change. And that's great that he changed. Like you said, we're not going to, sweet. And whatever his motives were, we're not going to talk about because nobody knows what goes on inside anybody's head. But Paula Dean, as an example, what she did was wrong, but she was never given the opportunity to prove, I'm going to change things. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You know, it was just, Paula Dean's a racist.
Yep.
Bye.
Fucking cancel her. You know,
her show's off the air. If you own any of her stuff, you'd better throw it out. You know, that kind of thing. And I am not saying that what she did was right, but I am saying that she was never given the chance to redeem herself. She was not allowed. She was not given that privilege. And I think that if it had been, say, Gordon Ramsay that had done that, as an example, he would have been given that chance. He would have been allowed. He would have probably cried on television. He would have apologized. There would have been some backlash, but he would have a show still.
I know that some of you are prone to interpret all of this as, well, these people are making an argument that, you know, women get to be racist and bad people. And no, that's not what I'm saying.
No. That's all what I'm saying or attempting to say. Women can be awful people just the same as men can be. We're all capable of being total assholes. I believe that there is a redemption process for men and there isn't for women. Once you fall off the quote unquote pedestal of being perfect, you will never be able to get up there again. And it was a hard time to get there to begin with. Dr. Lewis, in the example of Crazy Not Insane, you know, she's a doctor. She has all of the education. She is more, just as, if not more qualified than some of these people men that she has testified against and with and for. And she constantly has to justify everything that she has to say. She constantly has to back up everything she has to say. She has to make sure everything is perfect. And then you have the culture of us as women, and I think it's slowly starting to become a little better, but certainly with her generation of apologizing and of getting flustered and of trying to make everything right and make everybody feel better because that's the way you've been raised. And maybe she wasn't raised that way, but it is part of the culture to be like, okay, I'm a woman. I need to smooth things out. I need to make sure that everything is like this. I need to make sure everything is like that. Whereas a man can walk in the room and say whatever the fuck he wants if he's got a PhD after his name.
Finally, let's talk about, because we did an episode, a special episode about Bundy, but it was based on the movie with Zac Efron, a Netflix original movie. I'd like us to talk a bit more about that because it's funny. I don't seem to remember any reference to Dr. Lewis within that movie.
I don't remember any reference to her within that movie either. My first knowledge that she'd ever had anything to do with Bundy came from this documentary.
It is an amazing thing, and more, movies have been made about, Bundy and all kind of serial killers that she came in contact with, and nobody thought maybe we should include a bit of that lady that also wanted to find, the origins of these dolences.
Yeah, let's talk to Dr. Lewis. Maybe she has some insight into this because she was, very involved in the case or what. Because she was very involved with Ted Bundy,
Yeah.
um, which I mean, I had absolutely no idea about, and she uncovered many things about his past that certainly were not covered in anything that I've seen. She uncovered lots of things. She did her research. She worked very hard. She knew that to be taken seriously, she has to have everything perfect. So I believe all of the information that she found because considering her as a source and knowing what she had to go through to be taken even the slightest bit seriously, I have no problem believing any of her research. So I'm quite sure that Ted Bundy did not have the idyllic childhood that's been presented to all of us as mass consumption. I'm quite sure that other things went on with him, and it just makes sense. And again, nothing to apologize for what he did, and nothing to say that he shouldn't have been removed from society because he absolutely was going to keep killing women and hurting people in a horrible way. But just in the sense of understanding that this kind of treatment is going to create some people who are not going to be able to function in the world in a acceptable manner.
So the documentary is called "Crazy Not Insane." Once again, Jojo, I'm absolutely grateful that you suggested it, and it was incredibly enlightening, and we recommend it, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I do say there are some caveats. There are some things that I don't necessarily agree with in the sense of I think some people may have taken her in a little bit, which we didn't really get into that, which is fine. But I do wholeheartedly recommend this documentary to anybody who's interested in the plight of anyone who has a mental illness and is in the criminal justice system.
Definitely, that is the truth. And so, before we call it a day for today, we are going to invite you to follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. You can find Jocelyn on Instagram as
Jocelyn Podcast.
Meanwhile, you will find me on Instagram and Twitter as Mr. Puzzetta. That is MrPuzzetta. For me, for Jojo. Today, we're calling it a day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.